Restart it. Okay. What they're saying. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. So, no problem. Yeah. Oh, good. Well, folks, I think we got the meeting restarted, and I've been advised that we have to go over through our rehash the process over again so the people remotely can understand what's going on. So going to go on the record at this time at it's now at 6:15, and this is a continued hearing from the Deschutes County file number 247-22-000-812-CU and 247-22-000-813-SP. My name is Alan Rapelier. I am the hearings officer in this matter. Before we turn to the particulars of the hearing, I would like to turn things over to Ms. House to describe how the electronic process works.
All right. So again, I'm sorry for everyone that's heard this in person, but I'm going to run back through the slides for the hearing format for those that are attending remotely so they can hear where we are. So you should be able to see my screen now. All right. So my name is Caroline House. I'm a senior planner with the Deschutes County Planning Division. For tonight's hearing, it will be conducted in the following order. I'll explain the hearing format and then how you can testify. I'll present a brief staff report. Then we'll move to the testimony portion of the hearing. The applicant will testify first, followed by persons in support, then those in opposition, and lastly, anyone neutral to the applicant's request. After that, the applicant will get an opportunity to provide rebuttal testimony, and if staff has any closing comments, that will happen at the end. For anyone testifying tonight, both in-person and remote participation is allowed. Before starting your testimony, please be sure to provide your first and last name, as well as your mailing address. And the hearings officer has established time limits for tonight's hearing. The applicant will get 30 minutes, followed by anyone providing general testimony will get 3 minutes, and then the applicant will have 10 minutes for rebuttal at the end. Hearings are for in-person participants. I'm not going to review this again, but I think you can see everything here in the slide. You'll get called up to the table for your testimony. And please be sure to speak into the mic so we can pick up your audio. For remote participants, please note you need to be attending via Zoom to testify. After the in-person participants, you will be asked to provide your testimony, and hearings officer Rapelier will ask that you use the raise hand feature to notify staff that you would like to testify. If you're on a computer or smartphone, you'll use the raise hand feature, which is a button that should be at the bottom center portion of your screen. If you have called in, you will need to dial *9 to activate that same feature, and that's how we'll know you're going to testify or would like to. Written testimony can also be submitted tonight. If you're in person, please hand that to me. If you're attending remotely, you will need to email that to me. My email is caroline.house@deschutes.org. And hearings officer Rapelier and staff are responsible for an orderly and respectful hearing. Anyone being disruptive may be asked to leave. So I'm going to pause here, and this is where we left off before. So thanks everybody for your patience. If there are any objections to the hearing format, can you please notify me now? And if you're attending remotely, you'll need to use the raise hand feature.
Can you explain the applicant's time frame for this one?
It's 30 minutes. The applicant has 30 minutes and then a 10-minute rebuttal at the end. The applicant has the burden of proof in the matter, so they get the most time. Just the applicant. Yes, please. Yeah.
All right, so I don't see any raised hands online, so I'm going to turn it back over to hearings officer Rapelier for his hearing instructions.
Thank you, Ms. House. As Ms. House described, we are following the normal hearing procedures in the county code, and I'll provide sufficient opportunity for everyone to participate at the appropriate time. I ask for your patience as we make sure we get through each of the steps she just outlined. This application is considered through a quasi-judicial process. I will consider only factual evidence that is in the record. I will then apply those facts to any relevant provisions of the county comprehensive plan and land use regulations. The standards and applicable criteria relevant to this hearing were identified in the public notice announcing the hearing. They are also set forth in the staff report. The public notice and the staff report are posted on the county's website. They're also available directly from staff upon request. It is important that you direct all your testimony to the standards and applicable criteria. If you believe a criterion applies that was not listed, you may address the unlisted criterion. However, I urge you also to explain why the criterion must apply and to do so with specificity so that other participants may respond and so that I can address the issue in my decision. The failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable me or the other participants to respond precludes your ability to appeal that issue to the Land Use Board of Appeals. Also, the failure to raise a constitutional or other issue relating to any proposed conditions of approval with enough detail to allow me to respond to the issue in my decision precludes an action for damages in circuit court. As I just noted, I serve as the county's hearings officer in this matter. In that role, my job is to be a neutral decision maker. Thus, while I have a contract with the county to serve in this role, I'm obligated to remain impartial, and I do not represent the county's interests or the interests of any other participant. To that end, I state for the record that I do not have any relationship with the applicant, and I'm not aware of any connections I may have or other participants in this proceeding that would prevent me from remaining impartial. I have communicated with staff, but only to discuss the particulars of today's hearing and not the substance of the application. And I do not have any ex parte contacts to disclose. It's my obligation to preside over this hearing in an efficient manner. So how many people are here to testify that's in person? Okay, great. We've got, and how many are going to be testifying with the applicants group? Okay, they pour the, excuse me, as an applicant, Ms. Andrak, just you two. Okay, so there's other people, there are people will be testifying in support. I understand that. No people testifying in opposition. So, okay. And do we have a line from the web about who is going to be testifying? Can you get a count of that by chance?
Anyone attending remotely, can you please use the raise hand feature to notify us that you're going to testify or going to ask to testify? And that's *9 if you've called in, or there should be a button at the bottom of your screen if you're using a computer or smartphone.
Okay, seeing none. Before we begin, is there anyone here that wants to challenge my ability to hear this matter or to challenge the county's jurisdiction over this matter? Anything from the web? Okay. All right, then let's turn it right back to Ms. House for the staff report.
I'm gonna share my screen again. All right, so the subject property is located at 7505 Northwest Eagle Drive. This is a few miles west of Redmond, or the city limits, I should say, of Redmond. And nearby uses primarily include residential uses, agricultural uses, the Klein Falls Air Park, and the Eagle Crest Destination Resort is to the south. As has been noted a few times now, the applicant has requested conditional use and site plan approval for a recreation-oriented facility requiring large acreage. And specifically, the proposed facility is an outdoor motocross track consisting of 4 courses. And you can see here on the screen, this is from the applicant's submitted materials that were dated July 10th. The 4 courses are identified in yellow, red, blue, and green in this image. So the operating characteristics based on the information I should say in the record today, before I think 3 or so, shows that the use will require 6 acres approximately. And staff understands the proposed recreation-oriented facility will include training and proficiency instruction, training camps, general rider access to the courses, and participant viewing areas. And again, based on the information that was received prior to kind of the end of the day submittal, staff understands there won't be a limit on the number of riders or visitors. Hours will vary by month and may be subject to change, and fees will be collected at the facility. So the next 3 slides identify 6 different issue areas that staff is asking the hearings officer to focus his review. There are other issues identified in the staff report, but I'm just going to go over these 6 for tonight. So the first is the proposed use a recreation-oriented facility requiring large acreage? Next are the course berms a structure or a building, as there are additional criteria if the berm would be found to be a structure or a building? And these next three issue areas, staff believe are all kind of tied together. But the first is, has the applicant provided sufficient information to understand the operating characteristics and impacts of the use? And this kind of ties directly into the first issue that I just mentioned, which is the proposed use compatible with the surrounding uses? And it's staff's opinion that without a clear explanation of the operating characteristics, it will be very difficult to understand the impacts, and then very difficult to conduct a compatibility analysis without additional clarification from the applicant. I do believe the applicants supplemented the record today with some more information, so I haven't had a chance to fully review that. And then the last point that I think ties into these two previous issues is, does the proposal include sufficient mitigation measures to address the anticipated noise, dust, and visual impacts? And similar to the last issue area, it's unclear how you would determine if mitigation is needed, or if it will be effective without knowing what the anticipated noise, dust, and visual impacts are. And the last key issue I'll highlight for tonight is, how does the county's noise control ordinance impact the subject land use application? I believe the applicant may have addressed this in their latest submittal, and county legal counsel has also touched on this issue in a memo that was added to the record today. So talking about record materials, since the initial hearing, a lot of materials have been received. The applicant has supplemented their application materials a couple different times. The county's received over 100 public comments, both in support and in opposition to the request. Additionally, general correspondence between the applicant and staff regarding the review requirements has been added to the record. And the county legal counsel has also submitted a memorandum responding to key issue areas as well. All of these materials have been uploaded as of, I would say, 5:30 today into this website. So everything's current. Anything after that time, I know I saw something in my email just a minute ago, will be added after the hearing. But as far as I know, everything through 5:30 is available and viewable through the website. So that concludes everything I have prepared for today, but I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. House. I do have a question. I've been very interested in that noise control ordinance. I've looked at that, and I was kind of curious how it's been applied in the past. I mean, it seems very pretty strict. It says for motor vehicles that any noise that disturbs or endangers the comfort, repose, and health of persons 30 or more feet away can be restricted. So, I mean, has it been, and I was kind of curious how the county's applied that when you have, someone who gets a home occupation for a cabinet shop. I mean, you're going to be hearing that more than 30 feet away. And have they said that because they have a land use permit, they don't have to comply with the noise ordinance, or is that something that can be separately enforced?
So I know the memo from county legal counsel touches on that issue. I don't know offhand whether the county's been consistent in their application of the noise ordinance.
And I just glanced at it, got it just this minute. And I did see that you have said that you have to comply with the county noise ordinance, but I don't know if there's been enforcement actions for the ski lake or something. Okay, well, I'll just have to.
I would ask that if there's an open record period, I would be happy to respond at that time with more information.
I'm loath to keep the record open because it's been going up for some time. So anyway, let's see another. Has the county in the past used provisions on conditional uses to basically allow a 3-year, period where then the conditional use gets back and gets reviewed again to see whether the impacts are right? I've known that's been used all across the state of Oregon. That's a pretty frequent condition of approval that your use is going to be reviewed in 3 years to see, then the neighbors get a chance to live with it for 3 years and see whether it is, does it bother them? Is it untenable? So
I'm not aware, but I would ask county legal counsel if they are aware of any conditions of that sort. It sounds almost like a code enforcement issue, I think, is typically how we've dealt with it, but not had a specific time period. Ms. Marshall.
Good evening, Stephanie Marshall, Assistant Legal Counsel at Deschutes County. That's a fascinating question. Some of the hearings officer and board decisions that I reviewed in preparation of the memorandum, there was one, and I don't believe it was the ski lake although maybe it was. And so if the record is left open, I can do some further analysis. They actually had, as a condition of approval, they had the applicant execute an agreement to comply with conditions of approval. Now, that's something that's unique that I hadn't seen in my prior practice with and for the county. But the question of consistency between similar applications, the ones that I reviewed today had to do with a dog kennel, barking, and measures that were taken to kind of try to mitigate that, the ski lake, dude ranch, similar types of recreation type uses or loud uses like the dog kennel. I personally have not seen a condition of approval, and I would wonder what provision in the county code one could rely on. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say no, but I'd say I'm curious.
All right, that's good to know. I appreciate you giving me. I think that's all the questions I had for staff. And thank you very much. So now we'll go to the public testimony, and now it's the time for the applicant to come up and testify. And again, I'm sorry for not being here last time. I'm here all ears to hear what you have to say today. 30 minutes, Ms. House, can you keep track of the time?
Yeah, we'll start a timer. It'll be on the screen in just a moment.
Okay, great.
When it disappears, that means the time is.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Go ahead and say your name.
Justin Homan, 7505 Northwest Eagle Drive, Redmond, Oregon.
And I'm representing Justin Oman, Lisa Androck at Fictionary, 210 Southwest 5th Street, Redmond, Oregon. Justin's going to present first, kind of give you some background on himself and how this proposal came about. And I think that'll help expedite our presentation.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna thank everybody that's given comments, read all the comments, and want to start with just what and why I'm here, how we got here, and I have to give some background on that. So I'll give you guys an overall background on how I got here. I currently work a full-time corporate job, 8 to 5. I've been a professional athlete in motocross for over 20 years. I still do that somehow. And I have a property management company. So I moved to Central Oregon in 1997 to work at the college as a college administrator. And, I moved here for the reason a lot of people move here, the outdoors, the mountains, the climates. I came down here with my UW snowboard team and ski team and fell in love with it, missed Idaho. But I went home and did some work. I had to figure out, there were some differences in what it would take to live here and what's land use like. So even at that first idea of coming to Central Oregon, I did some homework because Washington laws, ordinances and county ordinances are different. So I did some homework. So after that, I just knew there was ORV, OHV areas, and there was people that have some private personal tracks and interested me even more. Just graduated college, got my first job out of college. And so I came here for all those reasons. So the outdoors, the mountain, be able to ride my dirt bike some more, which I was just getting into. So I quit. I grew up as many of my students have and friends that I've met here grew up riding dirt bikes with my family, camping every weekend. And I stopped that to put myself through college. So, but here I am. I got through college, moved here. First people I met, I didn't know anybody. I met them out the OHV Milliken Pit, they call it Milliken OHV area. And that's where my first friends really came from. We're out there and that was fun. It was the only place I could ride. I started racing again, something I hadn't done in 5 years. And I started to, look around and there weren't really any places to ride. And I got proficient. I was better than when I quit and started racing professional. And there was no place to ride in Central Oregon. This was back in 1999, 98. And I'd go train supercross out in Milliken Pit, which is not a supercross track. And, track is a closed course track where you have a specific place you can go. Those pits and OHV areas, there's no direction. There's no safety protocol. There's no track. There's just rocks and sand. It's fun if you like that kind of riding, but for training, just wasn't something that worked for me. So I was at the college for 3 years. I started looking for property, started reading land use ordinance. And I discovered that RR10 and even bigger parcels did have some verbiage in it that allowed for people to have a private motorcycle track. I probably spent a year looking for my first home. I looked at over 50 properties. Coming home from a buddy's house that had his private track, I would go a different way home every time I went home. And I drove by this house that is the subject property, 7505 Northwest Eagle Drive. So I figured I was R10. At this time I worked at Ameritata, which is a real estate company, and I have capabilities to look up what zoning is and acreage, and I went out there and put a shovel in the dirt, and it's different than a lot of dirt in Central Oregon, where it's either desert sand or it's lava rock. It's like one or the other, and most properties you can't put a shovel down more than 10 inches or 12 inches, and you're hitting lava rock. So I put an offer in this house, I did go to every single neighbor after I read up on the ordinance, and it had this verbiage in it. It's been in there since 1979. Off-road vehicle or racetrack is permitted within RR10. And it had, the verbiage within it, the large acreage, but specifically off-road vehicles and or racetrack. So knowing what I wanted to do with the property, I still lived at the college. Actually, I hadn't started Marital yet. I lived at the college as part of my job, and I bought the property because of the land use I was able to do, because I wanted a place I could ride for myself, my own personal training. So I did that. I knocked on every neighbor that I could see. There were 10 different neighbors that were adjacent or even further back. I knocked on the door, told them who I was, told them I was looking at buying this property, and I race dirt bikes professionally, and I want to build a track. I want to build a supercross track. And none of them opposed that. They said, thanks for asking. I said the same thing. Thank you for listening to me. And if you ever have a problem with what I'm doing or have a question, here's my name and phone number, or come on over. It's just the manner of which I've worked and owned this property for 25 years. The other piece of this is just the fall and winter, when we race dirt bikes in the Valley, Salem, Washougal, all the prime tracks, they close when rain season comes. They're clay, they're slippery, they're muddy, they close. So really limits even all the resources you can ride. People do come over here to do the deserts and the pits, but motocross racers do not. They're here they want to find a racetrack that has some safety measures to it, a flagger in case there's a crash and a blind obstacle, and become better at their sport on obstacles and closed course scenarios. Again, I looked at the code and zoning, and again, I got busy. I got good at motocross. Freestyle motocross came out, and I ended up having a 20-year career. So some of my ideas and really the nature of the sport evolving to having schools and having training, which didn't really happen when I was a kid, have transpired since then. So I bought the property in 99. I've owned this property for almost 25 years. In the 25 years, I've been jumping just that property, what I did with it and the work I put into it, which was my own personal track and my own schedule of 2 days a week during the week. And if I was home on the weekends, I'd ride both weekend days just to train. That created a scenario where I raced supercross, became professional. Freestyle motocross allowed me to travel the world. I've been all over the globe performing for other agencies, been on TV for X Games, won gold medals, won national championships racing motocross. It's just really changed my life and my family's life. And then thinking about it, talking to others, and how I'm not really good at talking about this. I was able to perform at monster truck shows. I was able to perform at the Winterfest several years. Be an entertainer, bring a value to this community, and people, value that people paid for. And we did tours around the world and tours around the United States. So what happened at my backyard turned into a career and even something bigger, because now I have a promotion company that does shows still all over the world, and also in the States. We still have my own production company. I hire riders to do what I do, and we do jump shows. And all this happened because of what I had in my backyard. And just to feed off some of that, we're doing fundraisers. We raised $5,000 to what's it, July 27th in Prineville, Oregon, at Wild Ride Brew. Redmond, it was a Crook County Rotary function where we partner with them, and all our profits go to the Humane Society of the Ocho this year. And we do something different every year. In Redmond, we've done that for 6 years, where I'm super proud that, again, partnering with Wild Ride Brew, the Redmond Rotary Group, we gave $10,000 to the Redmond Pump Track Park. That's a public park. The second year, we bought a canine unit for the Redmond PD. The COVID came in and took one of our years away. So, but that third year, the Central Oregon Veterans Ranch, $10,000 went to that. That's located in the Redmond, Oregon area. And then we did Redmond Oasis Homeless Shelter, which is something that, with the homeless problem we have at the airport, we're putting $10,000 in seed money to build a village, therefore, for they can have resources and possible housing. And this year we're giving $10,000 to the Redmond Senior Center. So that's just money that we're doing. This is now an annual event that builders and realtors and local companies are all the sponsors that support that money and support the event. So I'm super proud of that. Things I don't talk about much, but it is all things that I had to realize through this process of what that backyard and what the work has been put in, and what I've been able to do with it has created. So I really appreciate that. And now moving into what I've been doing, started doing some schools with my own kid, my own daughter and son, and then, one of their friends. And that's just transpired of how fun it is to, and I do shows all over the West Coast, at arena cross shows, which we have a big arena cross show here every year. And I always got antsy because I would see parents cheering their kid on, go faster, do good. And, they wouldn't tell them to things like stand up or use your brake, or these fundamentals that they would then crash into a cement wall, because that's what those arenas are, or a fence, or get hurt really bad. So that's really where I saw that, and I started doing that with my own kids, and it transpired. COVID came about, and kids couldn't do much. They couldn't go out. And motocross got bigger, rodeoing got bigger, because there was things that still went on. And I've had questions every year on training, and for the arena cross comes around to Deschutes County Fairgrounds, can we come ride your house? Can we come train at your house? And the first 15 years I just said no. And a lot of it had to do with, they wanted to learn how to do freestyle. And I'm like, you got to learn how to do the basic, be a top level racer or amateur before you should be doing backflips and doing freestyle tricks. So again, I've always had that piece of me of be safe. There's a process, do the work. And here we are. So that Deschutes County Fairgrounds event's been going on for over 12 years. These last 3 years, because of COVID, I've done schools at Christmas Valley Racetrack. That's about 3 hours away, 2.5 hours away from my house. And then I've done some schools at Albany. Some of my students have hired me at the local racetracks, Washougal, to mentor their kid or train their kid, coach them through the day of our actual race. And then I've also done classes at my house too. And that's where I've really discovered, looking at the comments that have been submitted so far, it is interesting to me that a lot of the comments, as if I'm going to build a track that's not there. And what I'm proposing is something that really I've been doing for over 20 years. And the frequency is the same. I did add a turn track, which is a flat area of the property, but the Supercross track, the Arena Cross 2 track, has been there for 20 years. And the AX1 was created, it was more of my kids' little bike track, and it still is a smaller track. It's been there for easily 15 years. So these tracks have been there. They're not new. They're not really going to change in much structure other than to abide by county code or this conditional use. And the things I really get, other things I've done to make this safe, it's hard to come by. I'm a United States Motorcycle Association coach, which you have to be either a pro rider, and you have to prove that you're accredited. You have to do safety tests, CPR, know some basic medical, if there's someone that gets hurt, what to do. So I've gone through that. I have been certified. I am a coach. I've been that for over 2 years. And those are things that are rare. Not everybody can just go sign up and take the class and do CPR class and be a coach. It's a nationally accredited institution created by past champions in the sport, professional champions. And through all these years, I haven't had I haven't had I haven't had one officer show up at my house. I haven't had a county letter come to my house. I haven't had a neighbor come to me and have a complaint in all of my years of living there. And I've done the same activity. As you see in the picture, it's dirt bikes. That's what I do. And I try to be respectful. I asked even with this land use, I went to all my neighbors first, all my immediate neighbors that I knew that were going to be noticed, and said, "Hey, I'm going to do this. What do you think?" So I had a conversation, and really I have letters of support from every single one of them. I know one of them submitted something later concerned about land values, but all of my adjacent neighbors that touched my property gave letters of support. So I think that's rather telling, especially after they all have lived there for at least 10, some of them even 15, 18 years. So back to the what and why it's important to me is this, I've seen so many of these riders in the room behind me, adults, kids, beginners, professional. They're winning races now locally in the Northwest. They have a bunch of new friends. They have a new family. Our families are friends with their families. So it's it's a lot of that's not what people think motocross is, but it's all it's ever been. So yeah, it's been super rewarding. Just looking at kids, all being safe, enjoying family. And really that's it, especially in this day of YouTube where everything is a snapshot of when you did it correctly and you just send it and you just go faster. That's not my protocol. I'm opposite. And I should know. I've risked life and limb doing the freestyle, which is very, very, you do it wrong, you make a mistake, you are hurt. And so I've done that for 20 years. So it's a lot of what's in me to make sure this is professional. My professional background with schooling and my job, I want to be respectful and I want to do this right. So I'm here. I've been doing it for, lightly for a year or two, but the last year was pretty heavy just to see if it was feasible, just to see if it was even there was a demand and if it was worth it. And it was rather telling to see what the last 2 years have transpired and how many people and of the community in Central Oregon, even from Portland, willing to travel from Portland to do a class. And I haven't even put this out on the internet as far as a thing that I'm doing. And we were like at zero support letters as of 36 hours ago. And now I think we have like 45 plus. So we haven't even gotten it out there yet.
Can you talk about other sites you looked at?
Oh, yes. Part of this process jumped back 10 years. I work with Dan Deschutes. He's the director of the Deschutes County Fairgrounds. And when that was bonded, it had a motorsport component to it, which was a drag strip or off-road truck track or motocross track. It was in the bond when they got approved to build that thing. And since then, Dan Deschutes has retired. Jeff Hines is the new county fair director. He's met with me. He's asked me, and I've done soil studies out there. I've gotten aerials done. I've had soil studies done at Deschutes County Fairgrounds as a prospective track, and they came out negative. It's a rock pile. They've mined all the dirt. It's pure rock. Even the trophy trucks that were there. It was a course that was makeshift. It wasn't super desirable, and the bad part of it is you can never change it unless you brought in $100,000 worth of dirt, because there's not any soil. So for motocross, that wouldn't work. For the trophy trucks, they did that for a little bit, but it went away. Same thing, Madras Airport. I've been approached I do shows for them every year at the air show. We're doing it this year on August 25, 26 to perform for them at their air show. They have a motocross track there that was alive like 15 years ago, and it went out of business, or just the promoter that ran it, because it's owned by the airport / the city. They own it and they manage the contract. The speedway's there too, the race car speedway. And a promoter in Albany that does motocross tracks took it over for a couple of years, and then that contract was not renewed. They've hit me up for 5-7 years. Hey, you should open that up. You should open that up. Same thing. The water, the water irrigation, the dirt, the contract they want you to go into at the speedway is it's not feasible. And the dirt it's okay, but it's got some clay in it, and people like to race over here in fall and winter. Just like the Prineville Adventure, I helped work on that to get it. I was a supporter of it because I want a dirt bike track in Central Oregon. Same thing, they layered it with clay. Clay, when it's cold and rainy, is slippery, just like all the tracks in the valley close. So nothing's been viable. I mean, and that's Prineville, Crook County. It's about 30 minutes away, actually 40 if you get to the actual track. So, we've been trying. I've been from every resource with Crook County, with Madras, just Jefferson County and Deschutes County to find a closed course scenario where it's safe, it's desirable enough for people to want to come and travel to, from bringing people in, not just for my primary goal is locally and community piece, but seeing others willing to come from Salem and from Portland and from Prineville to come here, come to my classes in Redmond. They liked it, and they would do it again and sign up for like a camp, a 5-week camp, if they had the opportunity to do it again.
Can you talk about your level of operation?
Yeah, the level operation, I know that came up, and I thought we clarified that. I have that. And we wrote it in. I think there's, for clarity, we're not, I said the 10 to 3, which is 5.5 hours, 2 days a week, and same thing on, so 3 days a week. So that's like 17 hours. We put in there a maximum of 20, and I did put in there with subject to change, but only subject to change because we've had days right here where it freezes and it snows. So, but 2 days later, that snow melts and we're good to go. So we wanted to clarify, we don't want to up the days, because I saw some of the comments saying we could go every day, 4 or 5, 6 days a week. Not at all. What we propose is 2 weekdays a week, 1 week in per week. And that was, and really the times are just a little bit different between the October through March period. It's a shorter time period because of daylight. And then through the April through September, I'm asking for an hour and a half longer per week just because of daylight.
Mr. Holman, is that just a recent submittal? Then I don't know if I've seen that.
I think it was last week.
Yeah, I mean, you summarized that in a different way, but we talked about it this week so much. I know that I responded to Caroline, that the subject to change is what I felt everybody was like, whoa, what's that mean? It's going to be 5 days a week. No, it might be, instead of a Tuesday, we'll do a Wednesday, or we'll do a Thursday. That we're not asking for. So we clarified saying maximum of 20 hours a week. But then give me some flexibilities on days, depending on, other times there's other events. So we don't want to, there's another event in Christmas Valley. We won't have an event that weekend or have anything going on at the subject property on that weekend. It will be a lot of us will probably go race at Christmas Valley and just not have anything happen at my property that weekend.
Number of riders.
Number of riders?
Yeah, how many do you think you're gonna have in a class?
The maximum I've had that I could even handle with the parking restrictions is 20 riders total. And that's not even with 20 parking spots, because in most cases, sister, brother come together with mom and dad, and there's 2 bikes and 1 truck. So we've done that math in with the site plan with the parking, 2 different ones for commercial versus non-commercial. But regardless, the max would be 20. That's why I put in my hour sheet that some days it's going to be one-on-one. On that one day, it's only one-on-one, or I might have 4 one-on-ones in 4 hours, or I might small groups or 2 to 5. But then the training camps, which is really when I talk about that Redmond Arena Cross that comes to the fairgrounds, that's when everybody gets fired up, and we have people from Washington and Idaho and California coming to that race. So it's a big race. It's a big economic thing that happens here, and a lot of people, it's their first race. So they when I say 20, that's usually those 5 weeks prior to that race, is that when I have that kind of demand. And that would be January to mid-February, because that event's been every year mid-February. And then we really don't have that type of activity. We all get busy racing in the summer, which is why this is different in summer. I got jump shows. We all, I'd rather be racing at Washougal than training at my house. And I think most of my students would be too, when it comes this time of year. So that's why I tapered that down. But again, if I get approved, the things I can do, which a lot of the comments opposing it and for it, is we don't like dust any more than the neighbor. We want a track that, in all the pictures, some of the videos I have, there's no dust when we ride. We don't want dust. We want muddy ruts in most cases, because we want to learn how to ride the ruts that we don't have here. And that's what my turn track is for. Traction is good, visibility is good. You lose customers or clients if you're a motocross track and there's dust. So if I do get approved, that would give me the incentive to do some capital improvements. Buy a water truck, improve the current hoses I have, and make screening. And I mean, there's a lot of ideas because I've been around motocross tracks all around the nation and even the world, and I know how to do it. I've seen it. And I just, where we're at right now, it doesn't make sense with all the matters, Jefferson County, Deschutes County, Crook County, the feasibility is not there, but this is already built. It would take 200 grand to build something like this again from scratch. And it's just more of a making it better. What else am I missing?
I think that's good.
You good?
So,
Ten
so I wanted to address, a couple of things real quickly, and then I've got some rebuttal time so I can follow up on that unless you have any specific questions you would like to ask.
I'll have after the end that won't count against your time.
Okay, so we're not asking on the large acreage issue. We're not asking for a general opinion to apply to the entire county as far as the interpretation of the RR10 zone. What we're asking for is the application of that code to this application. And so I think the memo submitted by staff kind of overstated what we're asking, what we're arguing. What I'm saying is based upon the express language and the intent of the code as it's interpreted, reading the express language, that the facility proposed, it's 6.57 acres. It's greater than 91% of all the properties in the lots in the R10 zone and considered large under that definition, but also in this type of track is expressly addressed in the code section as well. So based upon a number of factors interpreting that and applying statutory interpretation principles, we believe that this proposed application definitely qualifies for the ROF large acreage property as you would need to determine. For the soil surface improvement issue they raised, we addressed the fact that there is already some watering and compact soils. It's 26A classification soil, so it retains moisture when it's watered. I think it's a high value soil. So when it's wet, it's compact and it doesn't just drain to dust like some of the other soils around here. So it does hold its compaction, and it has been good. Just with water, it's maintained the dust mitigation. And so we're asking for the exception to the rule that's allowed in the code to just maintain the existing surface. And that also does make it more ADA compliant, easier for people to maneuver walking across it and everything else. And the dust is completely maintained, and the improved landscaping that he's going to have to do, whether it's commercial or not commercial, he still has to do some landscaping. And so all of that will also aid in not only screening the facility, but also controlling any dust and any noise. Relating to the harmoniously issue that's raised, that code is very ambiguous and I think violates ORS 215-416 sub 8. And the recent case law that Deschutes County was involved in the application of that of their code and how that law applies, where if the applicant can't figure out what evidence or argument is required in order to comply with a standard, then that standard can't be applied to deny the application. And I think that there are a couple components of the applicable code here where that actually is the case. The harmonious standard is one of them. And I think the other one is where the staff is arguing that we still need to submit more. We haven't submitted enough concerning site design and operating characteristics of the use. We've submitted a lot. We've submitted everything we have. I don't know what else evidence or argument wise we would need to propose. So Justin's agreed to many conditions of approval, whatever is required in order to mitigate things. We're not really sure what kind of visual impact mitigation is necessary because it hasn't been raised. The noise issues are regulated by DEQ standards, which he's going to have to comply with and have monitors on site and keep records of. So those are all mitigated and addressed by state law. And then there's a measurement to the nearest residence. So anybody within 1,000 feet is, covered by those regulations. And so he's reduced the hours of operation. It's, 20 hours at max. He's, limited the number of riders. There's so many things that have already been done that I'm not really sure what else we could propose to somehow flip the scale or flip the opinion on that issue. And therefore, I feel like it violates 215-416. And The other thing is the noise ordinance. That was never addressed in the notice regarding this application and what the applicable criteria are. It was never addressed in the incomplete letter that the applicant received to follow up on certain things that still need to be addressed. And when the code has specific standards that you have to meet for some certain types of conditional uses or regulations, those trump the general. So the noise ordinance would be a general standard. The code at issue has a specific standard, and that is 55 DNL that we've addressed, and also the DEQ regulations apply. So those would trump, I think, the general standard practice of the noise ordinance, which is just a catch-all for everybody else who doesn't have a specific noise regulation that applies. I think that's pretty evident in land use law that when you have a specific code provision that trumps the general. Also, I would say I have had a cabinet maker application for a home occupation, and he had his own noise ordinance regulations he had to comply with. There was not a condition of approval to comply with the noise ordinance. And then I had raised the issue about it not being a commercial use based on the language of the code, and how commercial is addressed in one section and the recreational uses are addressed in another section. And so we don't believe that this is a commercial use, but submitted 2 site plans just in case you disagree. So there is one proposing landscaping, and it really does just come down to the standards of landscaping, whether landscaping is required at a certain level if it's commercial use versus if it's not. And the county transportation planner said the residential permit for access is sufficient and no new permit would be required. So it seems like they're also thinking this is within a residential type of use and not triggering a commercial use. And then with the berms issue, that would require, if berms are considered some kind of obstacle that would need to be defined, which is not in the county code. And then if it was something subject to setback, the issue is really that the course would have to be redesigned to move the berms that are along the rear setback or the rear property line to be outside of that setback. And that would change the course, and it would have, there's a lot of things that would need to happen to make that happen. I'm out of time.
All right, thank you very much, Andrek. And just to put your mind at ease, I'm aware the noise ordinance is not a criteria that you have to address. It's not a land use criteria. It's just kind of, out there, floating out there, and the county has imposed it as a condition that you comply with it, and that seems perfectly reasonable to make things harmonious and make the neighbors happy. So anyway, but it's not something you can use to deny an application on. So I have some questions for both of you, if you may. Let's see. I was curious about this FMX, and are you doing jumping, and how much and how high? Because that involves noise. If you're up there, the long ways up in the air, that noise can carry quite a bit farther.
Yeah, well, it's a closed course, so which means everything's fine. My degree's in accounting, believe that or not. So everything's measured out, and I know what's up next, even when I can't see it. So FMX is freestyle motocross. It's where you do tricks in the air, but X Games, it really, when that was in its prime time, it was all over, primetime TV, and it was huge. Launched motocross and supercross into primetime TV too. We're jumping. Actually, my space is only 250 feet that I need, but I'm jumping 75, 80 feet in distance, 40 feet high. Part of I'm in a farm remonstrance area where dust and tractor noise is what I have an easement against my property, and all the properties around us have that. And also the reason that made me think about that is I also have a height variance because I'm in an airport zone too. I'm not supposed to build anything higher than 35 feet or something like that. So
I've seen those videos. Those people can go quite high. So
the ceiling's lower than 40, we're hitting it.
Okay.
So that's why I know what 40 is. So
All right.
that's really what, as I raced as a kid, I got into racing after college, and this freestyle thing came out and became big. So that's why I went after that.
But you're not revving the whole time.
No, I'm not rating. It's very, very okay. Close course. I get it. When you have I saw one of the comments in the record of that I used to live by a hill climb. they're Harley Davidson, five Harley Davidson motors with a paddle tire, and they're ripping up a half a mile hill. And yeah, that's not what's going on in my backyard. Or even if you have a track that's wide open or like a speedway, they're confined for an arena, like an indoor stadium, so they're short and there's a lot of obstacles, a lot of jumps is what that means. So they're not able to go down the street, like, or down the dirt road, which makes tons of dust and is loud, versus freestyle motocross, and I coast. You hear nothing every 30 seconds for 20 minutes and I'm done.
Is there a size engine limit on your cars?
No, just off-road vehicle, but the biggest thing we ever see is a 450, which are really, you could argue they're no louder than a 250 or a two-stroke 125.
Or did you allow two strokes on your property?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they typically louder than a four stroke?
No, decibel wise, they don't measure that way. People think that because they're a higher pitch, but in all the two strokes, the reason four strokes, I do both because there's no real small race bikes that are four strokes yet.
Yeah.
They're still the two strokes. So
A
once
little-
you get to a bigger.
Little bit about this, but not much.
Okay. All right.
You had measured it.
So you talk about your parking area being packed dirt, and I'm intending to defer to you as this is your property, and I think you made a good point that you don't want dust either. But I've lived over here and I know what happens in the wintertime. It gets all, wet and muddy and it gets tracked out into the road and then you get dust and you get ruts. And it's described, you've been using this property. Describe me, what your experience is with that property. And I also was thinking in my head that gravel, was less dusty than just plain, dirt.
Say that last part again.
It's in my experience, gravel seems to be less dusty than just plain dirt fields. I mean, I've gone to fairgrounds and drive around the fairgrounds parking, which is just flat dirt, and it kicks up quite a bit of dust. Whereas you go to a nice, parking lot, and there'll be maybe because they have dust control measures on the gravel. I don't know, but I've
seen both. I can say my experience down the West Coast and tracks, they don't use the gravel because sometimes with water, standing water, but I don't have that the way that my property, I have managed it a bit to keep it on property, but I have pictures. I know we submitted this. I have pictures of the actual parking lot.
right. I've seen the pictures in the record.
It really can become, it's got some sort of a clay base in it, even though it's not the slippery one I was talking about, like in the valley. And we've been able to water the other. I mean, really, my main operation is when the rain comes, September. Let's say. Well, yeah, September, October, whenever the rain comes. I wrote October to March, but from those periods of time, I'm pushing water. I'm not adding water. My irrigation is off. It freezes at night. It'll break my pipes. My biggest worry is, does it snow? Am I going to get a rain where I'm out there pushing puddles out between the obstacles and I don't water for like 3 or 4 months?
Yeah.
So there is no watering during those. That's the main time of year I plan to use it. But like I said, if I got approved, I would invest in a water truck, and I would be able to keep the other portions, during the other months of the year, keep those tracks watered, keep the parking lot watered if that was a condition. The gravel would be problematic because when there is standing water, for the same reason, we like to push it around and mix it in with dry and make the track pliable again. And if we had gravel, we wouldn't be able to do.
Well, I'm mainly just talking about the parking area here, the parking.
Yeah, but the way that things pool, I've been able to get a bucket of water off the parking lot. But the last couple of years, I've been able to make it has a drain. I built my own little pools, within my property that contain water on areas I don't want them. But I have had times parking lot and in my jumps where I'm pushing a 2-foot puddle, it'll pour or it'll snow and melt quickly, and I'll have, a lot of water on property in certain spots. And so if I want to ride in that certain spot, I have to push it somewhere else.
So speaking of the opposite problem, fire, do you have any fire suppression? I didn't really see much in the application. I imagine if the bike goes into the cheatgrass, that might create a potential hazard.
Yeah, I mean, I have my neighbor or hire somebody to, it used to be wild oats. All the fields around me are wild oats where they're actively farmed. So actively farmed around me in 2 spots. They're irrigated and watered. I do sometimes have mine baled and I use the hay bales, or I just cut it to keep that fire portion down. But otherwise I'm bordered by Eagle Drive, gravel road for my neighbor, which is also the irrigated field where he grows crops currently and has all these years. And now to the west of me is the equine reserve, which used to be bare sheet or sheetgrass, and now it's all horses. So people think dust comes from my place. It's now 5 acres of horses that trough all day. And when the wind picks up, my nearest neighbor, he's complained to me about that dust and not, he says, you're fine.
Yeah.
But the dust that gets me is off the equines.
So about anything, do you have fire extinguishers or water trucks available for in case there's any accidents with, on your riders or?
Pond that's large, and I have a 2-inch pipe that goes back to all 3 of the tracks. Yes, I do have irrigate 2-inch
Okay.
pipe that goes to, and I have 200 foot of hose that can get to every portion of my property.
And I apologize to some of this in the new submittals I haven't
I
seen.
didn't include that, but that's how, again, this turn track, we don't want to ride it if it's dusty. Or if
So
it's
could you
bad.
refresh my memory of what your dust suppression measures are currently, or what are they going to be proposed to be? Dust suppression for the track itself.
Well, really, the times I do camps in small to large classes is when there is no need for water. There's too much water, either no need for water or too much water. The summertime, like right now, pretty much all I do is the freestyle jumping and the AX1 track. I can water with, I've had some sponsors that have lent me water trucks. So if I want to do something in the hotter time of the year, I can irrigate and water, but it's really just the AX1 track, because to do all of them, it would take water truck of my own.
Right. And so you mentioned that the jumping again, is that why the wind, because you're gonna be up there being impacted by the wind?
Yeah, the wind is my biggest enemy when I'm jumping in freestyle.
Okay.
It'll carry you.
And so, do you, what are your proposals for mufflers and, making sure the motorcycles out there comply with the DEQ standards?
What I've looked into is what AMA, the American Motorcycle Association, requires at any and all of their racetracks, which are both in stadiums, but all the rest of the outdoor ones are at like Washougal, Washington. They have a decibel rating, and they're at 105 right now, and there's talk of bringing that down to 94. So that's something of the AMA, and I would just follow whatever regulation they have, and that's for local tracks as well as national tracks.
Are you planning to have employees working for you out there?
I hope, I kind of do. My son has been helping with schools. He's been learn how to drive a Bobcat, and I have some of the students that are on my team that races. They help pick rocks and we pull weeds. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope this becomes a viable thing. I really want to make it a pristine, nice thing to look at, and that's something our community is proud of.
That's also a familiar condition of approval, the limited number of employees at a commercial use in a residential kind of area like this. So what could you foresee in the next 5 years? Because one thing you can always do, if there's a condition that is problematic in the future, is you go back and ask it to be changed, and they give reasons for that.
Yeah, I mean, it would really just depend on, a lot of it depends on how much equipment I get. If I get a water truck, that'd take the place of two people, dragging fire hose around, or irrigation system. And I have even tapped into, there's an irrigation pond across the street. It is a potable water treatment, really. It's basically Eagle Crest's septic they don't have, septics don't work great, so they have their own septic system if they use that water. And that's what my neighbor uses to irrigate their crops all year, every year. So there's been some discussion with them as possible water source. If not, I'll get my own water source, primarily with the water truck, and I have my own pond out front too.
Okay. And then you mentioned, I think the answer to my question, is 15 spaces going to be enough for 20 customers?
Yeah.
Okay, you're confident with that.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's self-limiting. I mean, a lot of times people want more, more spaces and a lot of, applicants. And so, because they want to be able to have more customers, but so, okay, I think that's answered my questions. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony for both of you. Now let's go for the people at 3 minutes each who are testifying in favor of the application. Why don't we just get started on this side of the room and the front row? Is anybody in the favor of the application? All right, please step forward and state your name and your address for the record.
Good evening. My name's Amy Snow. My address is 2424 Northwest Hill Pine Court in Bend.
What was your last name?
Snow,
Snow, easy one. Okay, yeah.
super easy.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going, okay. Good evening. My name is Amy Snow, and it is an absolute pleasure and honor to be here tonight in support of the Redmond Motocross facility. I read about the track proposal in the bulletin. I don't know Justin. I do not ride. I don't have plans to ride, and my husband and I don't have any children, but I have experienced this exact situation before in Blaine County, Idaho. Additionally, I am an Aldo Leopold Land Ethic leader. I grew up on 60 acres and my younger brother raced motocross. My father built him and his friends a motocross track in our backyard so they would have a safe place to ride and train for their races. Our track soon became a fan favorite among motocross riders in the Wood River and Sun Valley area. The dust was never an issue for us, and specifically, backing what Justin was saying, it does matter. The soil composition does have everything to do with the amount of dust that is produced. Riders of all ages would congregate on our property several times a week and ride. After a few months, regular sessions became packed with riders, including professional riders from neighboring states. I recall the first time professional motocross supercross star Larry Ward came to our house. Word traveled fast that Larry was in town, riding with the kids and showing him tricks, and soon more kids arrived to ride and observe the superstar. Larry became a regular at the track when he was in town, and I witnessed his mentoring and saw the sparkle on the faces of the young riders. Larry actually lives in Washington, so my brother's track did attract many riders from states nearby. The kids were enamored by his presence and wanting to train harder in between his visits. Motocross fosters a natural mentorship environment that is truly magical to witness. There is not another sport that houses such a variety of ages and experience levels all at once like motocross does. All participants are engaging in the activity together, assisting, helping, encouraging, teaching, and building friendships for life. Eventually, the county donated some land, and my brother built a new larger track to accommodate the increased community interest. The new larger track outside of our neighborhood hosts a variety of events, creating more talent in my hometown. I practice dermatology and specialize in adolescent teenager skin. I have 20 years of experience treating this extremely special population. This population is our future generation. I have observed through my time in clinic that young people who are involved in a variety of activities, sports, and spend time with a mentor perform better in school, stay out of trouble, stay off the streets, and continue their education past high school. Motocross is the perfect platform to offer our young people. I think we all can agree the current weight of the world is pretty worrisome. Perhaps we should look at this motocross track holistically and focus on the unmeasurable value it will have on our Central Oregon youth. As an Aldo Leopold Land Ethic leader, I believe the location is applicable use for the current zoning district. A little dust and noise in return for a sport that fosters mental strength, physical endurance, commitment, relationship building, confidence, and hard work should not be our concern. Let's build a community that
We're over our time limit.
Okay, let's build a community that allows every young person a chance to thrive. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Snow. All right. Next, going on this side of the room, those in sport.
My name's Aisha Gott and my address is 2707 Northeast Laramie Way in Bend. And I have a now 16-year-old son who I bought a dirt bike 3 or 4 years ago now. And I think the main thing is it's given him something, as mentioned before, somewhere to focus his attention, which is why I got him a dirt bike. A lot of kids, typical sports, basketball, baseball, things like that, doesn't fit. Motocross, there's a huge community, very supportive environment, and that's what I wanted to introduce to my son. What I've noticed in the classes with Justin is that there are, kids like my son who are just new to the sport and beginning, and it's important for them to have a safe environment and controlled environment to learn in versus sending them off into the OHV areas where, they get in an accident, we're too far away from the car for mom to load the bike. And it's nice that he's learned the tools and techniques and things like that from a professional rather than trying to figure them out on his own. In addition to that, I wrote a letter, and in that I think it's really important that rather than us having to travel to places like Christmas Valley and Eugene, Springfield, wherever the other tracks are, our resources, our finances are going other places rather than staying in our community. In addition to that, I mentioned the different nonprofits that they've raised money for, which I think is important. It's a good example for the kids, and they see that, okay, I enjoy doing this sport. These are different ways that I can help my community through those avenues. Jesse has taken the classes, I believe, 2 times. And before each class, Justin has always spoke to the respect of the neighbors. We're finishing on time, ride within your limits, be safe. He doesn't let anyone do anything outside of what he thinks their current level is. So I think that's huge as well. But even just speaking to the support of his neighbors and being considerate and conscious of what they might be, how they might be affected. I've never witnessed anyone complain. I've never seen anyone come to the property. And I think probably 10 different times we've been there. So I've never witnessed anybody complaining or have any detrimental things as well as that. But I think mostly just the safety is important. It gives the kids something to do. I don't know if you've tried to register kids in Parks and Recs programs. You're 50 kids deep on the wait list for basketball. And I think it's important that we have a resource in the community who's willing to donate his time, his finances, effort. Sounds like he has a full-time job in addition to doing this in his free time. So I think that's something to be considered too. This isn't costing anybody else any money. It might, that's it. I'm out of time.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Scott. All right. Next, who on this side of the room? On this side of the room, who's in favor? Okay, well, I guess get in front here in the blue shirt. I'm sorry to get one in front of you. Come on up. Blue shirt, you with the, big, tall guy. And then maybe we can get the next, can we get 2 people up at the same time? I guess that would be helpful. We could, come on up. You were standing up before. Come on up. For this side of the room, in favor. Okay, please name your name and address for the record.
I'm Doug Steele. I live at 10247 Sundance Ridge Loop. That's in Eagle Crest. I've talked to many of my neighbors, and they're I guess, they're complaining that this is the potential for noise into our neighborhood. Like I say, I live there. I ride a bicycle. I don't ride a motorcycle. Never have, probably won't. But I've ridden by the track many times and noticed it was there. I don't know if I've ever actually seen anybody riding on it. But I could pretty well disagree with my neighbors. Just because you can hear something from some distance, at least to me, it doesn't make it an irritant. If there's kids out there playing and having a good time, enjoying, not getting hurt, learning things as I listen today, I think that's a great opportunity. More times than not, people get someplace and they think they're out in the country, then somebody comes in, the city finds them, some other activity finds them. It's really not your place to tell what somebody else could do with their property as long as it's lawful and legal. And that's kind of where I'm at on the thing. I think my neighbors are mistaken. I think they should be allowed to go through.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Teal. Can you hear the track? Have you heard it out there from
I've
your
heard
house?
motorcycles somewhere, but there's open land out there. It's all surrounded by BLM land, and I don't know where the sound comes from.
Right. Occasionally
I hear a motorcycle, and I'll be out in the dirt hiking or walking or riding my bike or doing something out there. I'll hear a motorcycle. You know, it's not freaky,
Okay, great.
happens.
Thank you very much. You, sir.
Darren Meese, 285 Northwest 67th Street. I live less than a mile away from Justin as the crow flies, and I have a business. I do off-road suspension service work for dirt bikes, snowmobiles, and UTVs. And I would just say that we need a place, you know, there's a bigger demographic of riders in Central Oregon than probably than anywhere else in Oregon and Washington. I feel qualified to say that. And we need a place for our kids to ride that's safe, and a place for them to learn the fundamentals of riding also. And I think that Justin's track fits both those, or fills both those perfectly. And I would also say that you know, the Justin's track is an arena cross track, which is a very specific type of track, which is not really, there's not an arena cross track anywhere near here, or a supercross track. So when they have these events like at Redmond, the Expo Center, which fills out, it has to be stimulating for the Redmond economy. And it's very dangerous to just jump on a track like that. And it's not cool to watch these kids get hurt out there either. So and you know, Justin's place is the only place that I know of to learn that kind of stuff. And then the only other thing I would say is that these people are good people, and they're families, and they're tight families, and they you know, they spend a lot of money in the town. They buy trucks, they buy trailers, they buy dirt bikes, they buy fuel, hotel rooms, they go out to dinner, and they don't cause any trouble. And that's it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Let's go to this side of the room for those starting from the front. Who's in favor? Can we get two at a time coming? Anybody on this side of the room in favor? There we go.
We can use both tables if you're not together, for example, so we can, but if you're together. so
Yeah,
please
yeah,
sit Together.
We'll be all right.
Want me to go first?
Yes,
Okay.
ladies first.
My name is Sidonia Darling. I live at 61775 Tomahawk Street in Bend. I'm a mom of two boys, 11 and 13, and their passion is dirt bikes and motocross. This is their sport, and just like football, baseball, basketball, an athlete needs an organized place to learn and grow their skills under professional supervision. There's nowhere in Central Oregon where motocross skills can be practiced and improved in a controlled, safe environment. BLM land, our designated trail system, is not a controlled environment. It's impossible to receive and visualized instruction, as well as it's completely different type of riding than an organized track. A track like Justin's is specifically and purposely built for skill level and safety where natural terrain is not. My boys love to race as well as just ride their dirt bike. Kids as well as adults need seat time on a motocross track in a controlled and safe environment. We as parents of kids that love dirt bikes want our kids to learn how to ride safely, ride smart, and progress their skills under professional supervision. My oldest son, he's been doing the Redmond Arena Cross since he was 4 years old. He started out on the PW 50, then onto a race bike 50, up to a 65. And when he got to the 65s, I was like, oh no, like, I don't think we're going to be able to do the arena cross anymore. We'll just have to see. And same thing I said with the 85. And now we're on 85s and super minis, and we're still going. It's his passion. And Justin has helped him progress and become a very smart, solid rider. I want to say that Mr. Homan runs a very strict program. My boys know what is expected. I also know as a parent what is expected. And you will not ride if parents and kids or adults do not follow the rules or communicate with Mr. Homan. I 100% respect Mr. Homan as a professional and as a mentor and a role model, as well as he already mentioned that his freestyle dirt bike jump shows raise money for various organizations in our community, like the Humane Society of Ochoco's and the Central Oregon Veterans Ranch. You will see some of the kids here today in those freestyle jump shows that are following in Justin's steps as well. My family 100% 100% supports this initiative and the motocross track that will give kids and adults the opportunity to learn and to practice and progress in the sport of motocross. It'll be safe and controlled environment.
Thank you very much, Ms. Darling. It seems like you've been out there a number of times. You've had any problems or noticed any dust or the noise have been an issue?
No, there's not really been any dust. We've done the arena cross class in February, like March, February. It's also very strict parking. This is like, we need to park here, here, and here. And noise wise, I mean, it's hard for me to judge because I'm around dirt bikes all the time. But it's also very strict. It's like, this is the time you can show up. This is the time we start. This is the time we finish. And yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. You, sir.
Hey, my name is Dave Royce, 20409 Trap Court, Bend, Oregon. Axel, you want to come up here? Yeah. So
Come on up.
yeah, so we're just we're a family here, and we've got Axel. He's 8 years old, and we're really kind of a case example of a group of people using Homeland's facility and his expertise. Axel, when we got invited to go out to his facility when Axel was just 5 years old, before his first race at Arena Cross, and we're like, man, I don't know, getting in this racing thing, it seems kind of crazy. But we came out there, and he had a protocol and a process to follow, and really has a way to reduce, control the variables to reduce the risk. And we've been going out there, and Axel's 8 years old now, and through Mr. Holman's guidance, we've met a lot of great people, but we've also had a lot of success in learning in motocross, and have gotten to do some pretty neat stuff through that. Axel's been able to join in a freestyle motocross show with him, and also go ride at a supercross event for KTM Junior Supercross. And none of that would have happened without him and his guidance and his facility. Here we have a top level professional athlete willing to offer their time, their expertise, to be a steward to the sport, to bring new blood into it. And Central Oregon is a place for that. I mean, it's incredible what our community has as far as recreation opportunities for people. I mean, we have MBSEF, who's coaching Olympic level athletes for snowboarding and skiing and all these different areas. And I mean, if you look in this crowd, there is a bunch of really talented, really driven people, and we don't have the place to do that. And Holman has created that. And I think the vision is, if he gets approval, it can be an even more amazing than it is, to create even more opportunities for this next generation of riders. And it's just, it would be great if it got approved. And so we're in total approval of it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Royce. All right. The next two on this side, come on up. And you got anybody else on this side who's in favor? Come on up. We got two of them. Okay. We got great. Two people. Come on up, please. And you, sir, with a hat, why don't you start out?
Oh, okay. I'm excited. My name is Jonathan Champa. I own a house at 19111 Shoshone Road in Bend, Oregon. Most of you guys know me. I moved up here when I was young, single mom, and I give everything to motocross, my success. I'm a successful business owner and employer. I've been racing motocross competitively for 15 years, and I started to go into Mr. Holman's house in about 2014. I also wrote a public letter. Please read that. Anyways, privately owned tracks. I'm just giving you some information here. Privately owned tracks run about 1 to 2 times a week, all around the Pacific Northwest and all around the West Coast. They run about 1 to 2 times a week. They typically run from about 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sometimes when weather changes, such as it's like hot or whatever, they'll run from about 2 to 6 p.m. Riders are limited at most of these public tracks, especially would be at Homan's. They have to sign up, sign a waiver, time. There's a schedule. There's always people telling what riders to do. Let's see, riders pay anywhere from $40 to $100 per session. Yeah. It is, so it is unfeasible to operate more due to the prep work required before each of these sessions. Each session requires 2 to 5 hours of prep work to manicure the track and to water. So let me get to water. It's unsafe for motocrossers and undesirable, unsafe for visibility purposes and unsafe for traction purposes, and also undesirable for traction purposes. The ground must be watered at a right, I don't know, just right, which means no dust. So that's a requirement for a facility, for riders, for everything. That's just, I don't want to say a requirement, that's an expectation. And that has always been upheld. I've been going there 9 years. Let's see. Another thing is these motorcycles have noise requirements, just as they do emissions requirements. The noise requirements from the factory are very, very stipulated, very precise. I can, if the record stays open, I can submit another comment with regards to the noise requirements. All of us are riding bikes that we race at AMA Shankston race and have to get noise checked. I get noise checked a couple times a year when my competitive racing. I'm sure a bunch of us do. To finish it up, unfortunately, any other managed and safe facility is over 2 hours away. And I know growing up here, being a kid, that was hard. And it takes a lot of resources to go that far to ride, you know, from 10 to 1 or 10 to 2, and then drive all the way back. And it would be very beneficial. So thank you.
Mr. Champa, that's very helpful to sort of talk about what the, you know, the community of racers are and what other your experiences. And so you say your bike gets noise checked. I mean, would it get noise checked at Mr. Homan's place as well?
We do not have a noise check system out there. But at a lot of motocross races, we do get noise checked.
And so how does that noise check work?
They take your bike, they put a decimal reading, I think about that far behind your exhaust pipe, and then they test it at idle, and then they test it at, they like hit the throttle, and then they test it. And I don't remember what the decibels are, but someone could attest.
I've seen that the DEQ regulations that they have noise, and it's like right next to the exhaust pipe. They have like it's 105 or something. So that's the kind of same thing you're talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I know from, you know, living on property, construction, mining is much louder and carries much farther than motorcycles.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Champa.
Is the record going to stay open?
I'm going to think about that. I said, you know, we have a 150-day rule we have to think about. So I'll be pondering that as we keep going through this.
Thank you. I have notes and I'd like to submit information on noise and dust.
Okay, great. You, sir.
Thank you. Yes, it's great to be here. My name is David Nader. I live at 21897 Obsidian Avenue in Bend. And just fully support what Justin's doing at his place. My son, Mika, who's 14, we joined the sport during COVID because a lot of the other sports just weren't going anymore. And I raced a little bit as a kid. And I thought, you know, this could be something he could really, really get into. And it's something we can do outdoors. And so he really took to it. And before long, he said, you know, can I go try a race? And we started racing. And, you know, I was an athlete as a kid. I was a gymnast. And it's very much the same kind of thing. You got to really know what you're doing to be able to do this sport safely. And to do it in a way that, you know, you're not going to hurt yourself. So I think, you know, you look at motocross and just so everyone understands who doesn't understand the sport, these kids are athletes. You know, they're not just out there riding and just for fun and goofing around. These kids are training. In between their riding, they're doing supplemental training, weights, calisthenics, cardio. They watch their nutrition. This is something they take really seriously. And what Justin provides at his facility is an extension of that. It's an actual place where you can go and learn. He's, you know, I'll give you an example. That, you know, you saw the different courses on his property. Well, there's one kind of bigger course that you have to show first before you're allowed on that course. He'll make you do, you know, kind of go through the steps and kind of jump the hurdles and see and make sure, okay, now you can go on this course, but you're not allowed to go over on that course until Justin says it's okay to do so. So, and then that extends to the arena cross, right? So, I mean, gosh, I can't imagine. I did Justin's class 2 years. The first year we didn't do the arena cross because I was frankly, I was a little worried about sending my kid on that track. And then finally he really wanted to do it last year. So we went to Justin's and he got all tuned up and ready to go. And he went out there and had a great time and rode safe. And so it's just, it seems to make sense if in Redmond, we're going to have an event like that, we should have a place where kids can train to do that kind of thing. So that's just the athlete perspective. And then finally, I just want to say this community is amazing. We got into it a little bit late and, you'll go to races and kids you're racing against, their parents will help you fix the bike, give you fuel if you need it. It's an amazing community and it's different. I'll say it's just different than if you go to baseball or soccer or other kind of sports that my kids, participated in Bend. So it's a lovely community, great people.
Okay, great. Is there anybody else in the room who wants to testify in favor? Okay, please come up, you too as well. Get you, both of you up. All right, let's start with you on the left.
Hi, my name is Kirabella Citra. I live at 455 Northeast Underwood Avenue. I'm 16 years old and I was raised in a motocross environment. I've never raced or ridden dirt bikes myself, but I've been raised through my dad and through my two little brothers who love riding dirt bikes. So from somebody's outside who has been raised through dirt bikes, I can see the effect that it has had on people. The people that my dad has introduced me to through dirt bikes, I've created some of those people I consider my uncles. I consider my cousins. I consider those people family. The dirt bike environment is a family. Everybody that we have created creates a family and a sense of belonging. My brothers have friends that they have had their entire life through that sense of belonging. And by giving us a track and a place for them to be able to ride that's not 2.5 hours away, creates a sense of belonging, which I think Bend as a place is such a place of belonging for the amount of small businesses that we have. Bend, Oregon thrives on small businesses, from the food we eat to the clothes we shop to everywhere. It's just another small business that's creating a sense of belonging for children that need somewhere. Dirt biking is an athletic sport that is such an amazing thing. And through FCA, which is Fellowship of the Christian Athletes, they have a motocross program that they have spent a while to get to. And my brothers went all the way to Idaho to race that. And it created that sense of community and that sense of belonging that Homans is creating so amazingly. And dirt biking, I really think, has created an environment for kids to understand the safety, how to be athletes and respect each other. It's a family, it's belonging. I consider most of those people my uncles, my aunts. And I really think what dirt biking has created is something that if you take a place that we can ride away from these kids, you're going to see worse impacts. And you got to create a safe place so they can ride. Because if you don't teach them how to ride, how to be safe on a dirt bike, how are they going to be safe? They're going to go somewhere else that's not, where they're not training, there's not eyeballs watching them. We want to keep kids out of the hospital and safe, and that's what Homans is creating. And I think that's such an important aspect. And I've been around dirt bikes my entire life. I've been to Supercross. We have a track. I've been to our track. The noise isn't really something that's ever bothered me from the age of 2 years old, the first time I was on a dirt bike, to me being 16 years old now. The noise has never been a problem for me, who I don't really like a lot of noise. It feels like every other day. And he keeps it so controlled that there's not going to be loud noises everywhere. So I just think it's something that we should keep in the community because the community that it's built.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes.
Sir.
Hi, my name's Ty Kelly. I live at 20320 Sonata Way here in Bend. And I would just second, the support and the comments that everybody has made here, but I do have kind of a unique perspective as a single male with no kids. Obviously this has been great for all the kids, but I think it's great for the adults as well. I know there's a bunch of dads out here that have benefited from the safety consciousness that coaching that Homan provides, and me specifically. I grew up riding dirt bikes, but just never got the education on how to do things correctly until I was grown and out here and training under his supervision. And since that time, I've just become much more safety conscious, a lot more proficient rider, and I just feel much more capable when I'm out there and other places around other riders, and it keeps me safe, it keeps everybody else safe. And so I just wanted to add that additional component. I hadn't heard it yet, that it's good for all ages, and there's definitely adults getting a benefit out of this as well. So, and I'm one of them. So thank you, Justin, and I support this.
All right, thank you very much. Now, anybody else in the room in favor? How about, we got one more here. Anybody else for the partner? Well, then we'll go to the online people.
Last one. Okay. Joe Citra, 61775 Tomahawk Street, Bend, Oregon, 97702. One aspect, Central Oregon is built upon tourism of recreational sports, all the way from fly fishing, mountain biking, Mount Bachelor, Smith Rock. It's world-renowned area for all of these recreational sports. It is kind of asinine to think that at this point in time that we don't have a dirt bike track, that we have to drive over to the valley or all the way over to Boise to do this, when we have such a developed OHV system to go ride our dirt bikes, but we don't have a closed course dirt bike track to go ride. So at what point in time is Deschutes County going to allow that to happen? Like Justin said, it's proposed at the Expo Center, but it's not a viable source. And the county's not about to buck up $100,000 to bring in dirt and to build us a facility to do that. But we have over 30 golf courses. We have thousands of miles of mountain bike trails. We have world-renowned Smith Rock mountain bike or mountain climbing. We have all of these things that bring in people from across the globe to our beautiful Central Oregon. So to say that we have the OHV system to go ride would be like saying, go play golf on an alfalfa field. It's kind of the same. It's not a manicured, it's not a closed course, it's not set up to do that. So it's two different styles of riding. So we need a facility where we can progress our skills and go in a closed, safe course, as safe as dirt bikes can be, but it's a closed course that we can go and ride in the parameters of that area. We can't go train and go learn how to jump a dirt bike on the trail system when you can't manicure a lip or you don't have landing properly. And then, you get kicked and you're crashing and you're out, miles away from the truck, or you have to deal with that. So in a closed course, in time, there'll be EMTs or whatever has to happen for that facility to run. And it's a controlled, safer environment for all of us to progress and to learn on. And Central Oregon is built upon tourism for recreational sports, and dirt bikes is a recreational sport. And that's something that is missing here. And it's, as far as we're all concerned, a necessity for our children and for all of us to learn and to progress and to do the sport that we love.
Thank you very much, Mr. Citra.
You're welcome.
Let's turn to the online people and see if we have any people want to testify in support online. We have any hands raised?
Well, again, just a refresher for anyone online, you'll need to dial *9 if you've called in, or use the raise hand button. And right now I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, let's move to opponents now. Let's start on this side of the room. Does anybody on this side of the room like come up? Can get two of you up at a time to testify in opposition to the application? And please, sir.
Okay, Don Clark, 600 Northwest 74th Street, Redmond, Oregon. I've noticed that the people in favor of this thing that testified tonight, the nearest one lives only over a mile away. And he actually gets business referred to him, I'm sure, from Mr. Hobart, because he does suspension work. The other person that was closest was in Eagle Crest. That's about 3 miles away over a ridge. Okay, I'm concerned with the sound. Ordinance 2015-012, section 8.08.040 prohibits a motor noise which disturbs persons 30 feet or more from the vehicle. Section I prohibits use of motorcycles in such a way and manner as to disturb the sleep, peace, quiet, and comfort of persons more than 30 feet away. Section N prohibits the use of any off-road motorcycle where it is heard by the occupant from the premises of an inhabited residence not owned by the operator of the motorcycle. This is the end of that area. This person wants commercial use of the property in an agricultural area. This is not compatible with our area. Our property that I live in is 450 yards from his jump. When the breeze blows from the west, which is normal, the sound comes right to us. He's suggesting summer hours, 6 to 9 p.m. He states that is when many of us are having our dinner outside and enjoying our garden. This Sunday, when there was a high pressure area, I checked the wind, and at 6:30, it was still 15 miles an hour, gusting to 19. 7 o'clock, it was 13, gusting to 15. 9 o'clock, it was still 7 miles an hour, gusting to 14. Now, the point is this, especially when he jumps, but when you hear those motorcycles, that wind just drifts the sound just like it's like 10 feet away. It's just terrible. He states in his application he could have up to 20 riders. I can only imagine the noise even half of that many riders can make with motorcycles. I am downwind from all of that noise. As a retired real estate broker with over 30 years of experience, I think the motorcycle noise will drastically lower my property value. Just think of a prospective buyer driving up to my house, gets out of the car and hears that racket. And that's what he's going to hear on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. Plus, I would have to disclose any adverse conditions to a buyer, and this noise would be an adverse condition you'd have to disclose. There's also an extensive network of dirt bike trails that are 5 miles west of his property. They can ride there. Mr. Holman is not even a resident neighbor. He lives miles away in a peaceful neighborhood. I don't think you would want this in your neighborhood or even 3 blocks from your house to listen to. So please follow your ordinance and do not approve this request. Please keep our neighborhood peaceful.
Thank you. I just want to point out that at the start of this meeting, I talked to staff about that sound ordinance, and it's not in the land use code criteria. And I mentioned it to also Ms. Andrak that
I guess if you approve it, we get to complain and then they have to shut him down.
and that is the sort of weird conundrum about this. I mean, you have to deal with that noise ordinance separate from the land use process. So I just wanted to point out to you. Thank you for your testimony.
It's not compatible in our agricultural neighborhood.
All right, ma'am.
So we're going back to the land use you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, this is supposed, and
Your
first
name
of all-
for the record.
oh, excuse me, I'm Tony Oliver. I live at 550 Northwest 74th Street in Redmond, Oregon. I'm 1,000 feet away from Mr. Homan's property. There are 2 fields in between, one mine and one belonging to the Nances. 2 things. I think just a housekeeping. 1, Mr. Homan's a very nice person. And 2, not everybody was consulted before making this application as far as the neighbors go. I moved in 2008. At that time, there was very minimal use of the property. And I agree, as a recreational property and your own, you can have a track and enjoy it. And I think they did. And then Mr. Homan practiced on it. And then the family moved away. And then we had new residents. During the time, and this, I'm sorry, is back to noise, is during the time of COVID, neighbors did not complain because the kids had no place to go, and we thought it would end. And the proposal says it won't end. But I go back to recreational use, and recreational use I see as something that you go and you do, and you don't have formalities. And this has a very structured system, or you're going to have camps, we're going to have training, you're going to have specificity, and people are going to pay for it. And that means it's a commercial operation. It doesn't mean it's a recreational operation. It's not something like if I wanted to swim, I'd go swimming. But if I'm now competing and I'm going to be in a structured area and be timed, it's completely different. It's not a recreation anymore. It's a competition, and it's athletic, and this supposedly is for recreation. So I object to it on that. It's a commercial thing. And I just think it's very interesting that everybody wants to have this from Bend and different places, but it's not in their neighborhood. It's in my neighborhood. I think Mr. Holman is very wonderful in wanting to have that type of thing, but I don't think that that's the place to have it.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Oliver. All right, next, people who are in opposition, please. Anybody else in the room? Okay, please come on up, sir.
Randy Watson, 1200 Victoria Falls Drive, Redmond. And I have ridden motorcycles for the last 56 years. And they were talking about the people that are all for it. I was talking to some real nice people before the meeting that very pleasant, and they're all for it, but they also live in Bend. And then I was looking at one of the things it was saying about getting your a very nice article for Jason, and it was saying about getting your adrenaline pumping. Well, it's right by the falls, which has 215 houses of over 55, an older community. And would you want your parents, your grandparents' adrenaline going when they're trying to sit out, have a barbecue, sit out on their patio, have their windows open? And there is a zoning, there is a reason for zoning. That's why they have it, and it's not for commercial. And it would be great to have this facility. And the more he talked and the more everybody here talked, I believe this type of facility is a real asset to the community, but it needs to be in a commercial industrial area where it isn't bothering people. And it's too bad if they have to purchase some dirt to make it work someplace else. But it's better than bothering a lot of people that want to be not disturbed. And the noise also will be, they talked about golfing. Okay, people golf at Eagle Crest. There are 3 golf courses, and you have vacationers. Do they need to listen to that noise? It needs to be in a commercial industrial place. And again, for all the children, I believe it's a needed in the community, but just not there. I was a realtor in Portland, and there was a track at Delta Park, and the noise was a detriment. And whenever I was showing property within several miles of Delta Park, if it was not on a weekend when they had races, I made a point of telling the people about it, because I would not want them to purchase a house and then they move in and, oh my gosh, there are the races. So it is a detriment. And like it said, most of the people that I was here, that were nice people, good family people that want it, most of them do live in Bend. So they're not hearing it. Their parents aren't hearing it. Their grandparents aren't hearing it. But they think it's great, and it sounds great to me. I actually, listening to everybody tonight, I listened carefully, and the more I listen, the more there is a need for it. But just not where it is harmful for other people.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Watson. Anybody else in the room who wants to testify in opposition? All right, seeing none, let's go check on the for the web. Can we see if there's anyone hands raised or?
Yeah, and just again, if you're online and you want to testify in opposition, you'll need to use the raise hand feature. There should be a button in the bottom portion of your screen or dial *9. And I'm not seeing any.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Ms. House. Now, there's anybody who is neither favor or against, who's neutral, but just wants to be heard on the matter. Anybody in the room and fits that category? Okay, how about on the web? Any neutral testimony?
No raise hands.
Okay, great. So now let's right back to the applicant for 10 minutes of rebuttal.
Justin Holman, 7505 Northwest Eagle Drive, Redmond. Yeah, just in hearing everybody's testimony again, super appreciated. And some points that I want to reiterate that are, you know, I've been in Eagle Crest, that area, for a long time, and the OHV and the riding and the mountain biking on Klein Butte was very open, and it's been pushed back by the development of Eagle Crest. That was there. You know, I read some comments for opposition that we were here first. Well, in most cases, I lived there first in those trails, and that OHV was much bigger at Buckhorn. And I used to be able to mountain bike all over, and we should be able to ride dirt bikes on Klein Butte, but that's not really allowed anymore. It's restricted and taken away by the development. And you know, I heard some people talk about real estate. When that was the main person in the real estate. I did comps. I did Mountain View motocross track and on Mount Hood area, Sandy, Oregon. I did Washougal. I did 3 different studies regarding real estate and price values. And I have this testimony logged at Crook County. I did all the back work and submitted it in that land use for the approval of Prineville Adventure Park. And the proof was that the properties appreciated around those tracks quicker than any other the properties in that county. And that was both in Washougal, which is Washington, separately the Sandy Mountain View. It's called Mountain View Track. It's in Sandy, Oregon, in that county. And so I did those comps. That's filed, that's submitted with Crook County land use approval of that track. Heard some things about, you know, recreation or commercial. I go to Mount Bachelor and I pay $50 to go up the ski lift and mountain bike, and I go to Smith Rock and pay a fee. So, I mean, not a dispute over paying for things, but it's still recreation. It's still for sport. It's for fun. It's for family. We're all, except for I think me and a couple others, we don't have an AMA license, pro license, or don't make money at it. We spend a lot of money at it. So, but as you see, it's worth it, and it's family stuff. And you know, I heard some decibel stuff. I guess go back to, I've heard, you know, I have 5 adjacent neighbors. The only people I went to every door that I knew was going to be noticed before they were going to be noticed. So I have all 5 adjacent landowners, all the ones that were getting noticed, they all wrote letters of support. I think that's pretty telling for the people that say this was all in Bend or this is just not in our backyard. That's rather telling. And it's been 20 years they had to live with me, or 24 years, because most of them have been there longer than me. Others have been, like I said before, 15 to 18 years, and they're in full support. They see what goes on over there, and they like it, and they like the rapport that I have with them to make sure things are done right. The R10 code, back to that, it has this verbiage in it: off-road recreation, including racetrack. I do think that the initial notice took me back a bit, took some of my neighbors that I talked to back a bit, because it felt different, like commercial track. We're going to have races. It came to me, are you going to have events? Are you going to have races? Or are you going to have spectators? And like, no, just the mom and dad or the significant other that brings them. So I even felt that when I first read the notice. And I think a lot of maybe the people reading it, it really looks like the record. Once that story broke in Bend Bulletin, I had one or two people even had a comment. And once that story broke, it was like, which was mostly positive. I mean, in my perspective is other than again, oh, what's going on in our next door. So their zoning is very different than my zoning. That's why I bought there. I have noise ordinances or noise easements regarding height of things. I have noise ordinance regarding airports. I have noise ordinance regarding farm remonstrance and dust. So agricultural, it says right in it, I have to deal with dust. I have to deal with farm noise. I have to deal with tractors at night. It says right in it. It's just an easement that's on all of our properties in that area. I don't think Eagle Crest has that same easement. We do. That's why that's just what we're up to. The last thing I have to say is just super proud of like these kids that have overcome challenges, crashing and getting up, losing more so than even winning, learning how to do that with mom and dad or with their competitors, becoming, again, like I said, losers, but winners, winning races locally at arena cross, being safe, but also winning. My son won't do it, but he qualified for a race we didn't plan to go to, and he got top 20 in the world. So that was pretty special to us. So yeah, it's just a thing that, we work hard. I've been through injuries. I've been paralyzed. It's just a crazy sport that teaches you these family values and work ethic. And I'm just really thankful mostly that I found this property and can offer hopefully this experience to somebody else.
Right, Ms. Andrak.
So I wanted to cover a couple of the legal issues again. I wanted to note that I didn't hear any of the opposition mention anything about visibility complaints regarding the track, and that it seemed that was not an issue. They're more concerned about noise. The noise is regulated by the DEQ regulations, and in the regulations, they have a requirement that Justin will have to keep one of those measuring devices on site and records. So that's part of the DEQ regulations for a facility. And they also have regulations that they've adopted for the noise restrictions, and they measure it for 1,000 feet to a noise sensitive use. They exclude the agricultural uses, industrial and agricultural. So they specifically, essentially you can interpret that as saying they find that this use is mostly compatible with agricultural uses, which is part of that zone, the RR10 zone.
Yeah, I read those DEQ regulations.
Yeah. So I wanted to note that the three closest neighbors that have complained about the property, one of them or the proposed use is, two of them, the Clarks and the Olivers, are over 1,000 feet away. And all three of them purchased the property much later than Justin. I think Miss Oliver said she purchased in 2008, Clark's purchased in 2011, and Kelly's purchased in 2017. His facility, his track, his use was there when they purchased the property. Same with the Eagle Crest Resort. Those people most of them probably purchased after Justin's track was developed and he was using it that way. They also came to the nuisance that they now complain about, noise, dust, and disruption of wildlife, because they moved to an area where there's a state highway that has over 15,000 vehicle trips, ADTs. They moved to an area that has an airport and an overlay zone, an active rock quarry on the top of a hill with about a mile-long road leading up to it that's all dirt. Immediately west of the Eagle Crest Resort and within the surrounding dry area that Eagle Crest encompasses. Outside of that mining operation is all OHV trails. They're not irrigated, they're on BLM land. So these uses were already in place when most of these people when they purchased. So when we're looking at what is compatibility for surrounding uses, we have to include the airport, the rock mining, the SMI zone, the airport overlay zone, the agricultural uses, and the OHV tracks. Now, if any of those proposed uses were here today, you'd be hearing the same complaints. My property values are going to be diminished. I shouldn't have to listen to that. What about the dust? How are they going to control that? This is not a disaster. This is a disaster for the community. This is impairing our quality of life. Yet they moved to the property. They purchased their property with all of these types of uses already in place. And they found it was still suitable for their needs. So I want to emphasize that Justin has proposed many things in order to control the dust, the noise. He's got to comply with DEQ regulations. I mean, he runs a safe operation, a very strict operation. He waters continuously. So go ahead.
Okay, but and one thing I missed on saying is that the use it's not an increase. I've heard a lot of the comments of addition, or this is a new track, additional track, or additional use. These last 2 years with COVID, I have had 20 bikes. I was sold out for the up to the Deschutes County Fairground Arena Cross 2 years ago and last year, where I had that max 20 every week. So like, and then I have all the comments, they really, if you read them, they're like purported something's going to happen or it will happen. And like, they didn't notice it had already happened for 2 years.
Are you finished?
Well,
Oh, thank you. I just have a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've read some cases about that, about the noise being, aggregated with, more vehicles and more bikes. And so in your experience, is that, I mean, is there a roar coming from when you have your 20 bikes out there?
And my only time I've noticed that is if some reason when it gets dark, it gets quiet.
Mhm.
So
Sound maybe carries better when it's dark or something.
I mean, I know that for riding myself because I watch the wind like everybody else. And then if it's too windy, I like the Clarks were saying, I usually don't ride because that's dangerous.
Right.
So wind usually makes, if it's too windy out, I just don't ride. And that'll impact us.
And so do you have, you mentioned noise testing. Do you have noise testing equipment? I mean, could you,
I know that everybody that's been enrolled in my classes does races and they've been to those AMA races or they're come from the factory. So they're either tested at the racetrack or they're already under regulation because they can't sell the bike from the dealerships until they're already, they can't sell them unless they're within the.
could you test those bikes for noise at your facility?
I have not.
But can you? Is it going to be difficult or is it?
I don't have the equipment at this time, but
Is it cost prohibitive? Do you have to buy a giant machine or just a handheld device?
I don't know. I don't know what the.
Handheld. We had a gentleman who was testifying. Yeah, because that seems like a reasonable condition to put a.
She says it's required by DEQ.
Okay,
it's
so-
already in there.
Okay, that's where that's
We'd have to have it.
right. And so, is the applicant asking to keep the record open?
No.
Okay, and so they don't want to keep the record open. Does staff want to keep the record open?
Yeah, we'll have a few closing comments if we.
Yes, of course. I'm going to get you
rebuttal
down.
And then maybe get to that.
Yeah.
Record, I've gotten some emails while testimony's taking place. So I obviously want to acknowledge the.
Yeah, right. Okay, great. I think that's it for you folks. Appreciate the applicant's testimony and the rebuttal. All right, staff, please.
Yeah, so just a few things. The county staff does not support hard packed dirt being an all-weather surface.
Okay.
That does not follow in line with what the Board of County Commissioners have found for other surfaces. I'm not sure if the applicant's willing to gravel the parking lot or not, but that would be typically how we would see this addressed.
Okay.
And then I just want to note too, for noise impacts, and I think in the rebuttal testimony from Ms. Andrak touched on this, which is establishing a baseline of what the expected noise impacts, I think is important for determining compatibility. And I do think she just touched on this and maybe some of your supplemental materials did. But as part of that, I think I want to note too that other applicants, when they've tried to address noise impacts, they've provided a noise analysis. So I don't know if a record will be left open, but that's something that has been helpful in previous hearings officer decisions and board decisions, is actually having this is the noise we expect to generate. This is a baseline for what anybody in this area would expect, and then making a compatibility analysis from there. And then the last thing I want to note is I got two comments, multiple requests, but two different individuals asking for an open record period. They believe that there's been testimony tonight that they would like to respond to, but they're unable to have time to do that.
And how are we looking on the 150-day clock? Can we keep the record open? Because we'll have to have the record open for, at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, so it would be, we're, I think, around day 30 right now. So I think it's always difficult to say.
For day 30, we should be okay to get it before the Board of Commissioners then if.
Well, but by the time we have our notice requirements for the board.
Right.
And depending on how long it takes for you to issue a
Right.
decision.
I'll try to expedite. I'll try to.
I think we might be okay, but just acknowledging that
Right.
we'd want to be mindful of the time left.
Okay. So, but you think 2 weeks would be adequate then, or because it sounds like.
So the code requires a 7-day initial.
Right. That's only for the initial application though.
And our for the initial hearing.
The initial hearing, and we've Well, I suppose we could, suppose we could do the 3, 7 just to keep it consistent with how we've done in the past.
Yeah, I guess it's true that the initial hearing would have been the first night, but I don't know how. I would defer to legal counsel on if we could.
The initial hearing was, well, it's true. We did have a hearing that night, the first night. And we did read all the things and we just had to continue it. So that was the first hearing. That was absolutely the first hearing. So we don't need to have an open record.
Stephanie Marshall, Assistant Legal Counsel. Yes, whether this is characterized as a continuation of that first hearing or whether that first hearing was, concluded and this is, like a subsequent hearing. I really believe that it's in the hearings officer's discretion to, decide if an open record period is allowed and what the parameters of that would look like.
Is there any desire for the applicant to try to provide a noise impact analysis?
No, I think that just imposing a condition of approval that the noise levels set forth in the county code and the DEQ regulations be complied with is sufficient. I think the cases that are cited or the decisions cited by staff reference things where there isn't other sources for regulating the noise and how much noise is generated by barking dogs, where we have two other levels of oversight, both the county as a condition of approval. Jetson's going to have to maintain equipment on site and follow DEQ regulations. So I think that a condition of approval can ensure compliance. And even if he took a noise reading today, but he has a different class, that's not going to necessarily show what his consistent level of noise is going to be, where 20 barking dogs is going to be 20 barking dogs on a regular basis. Also, those decisions aren't precedent here. So it's up to the, unless the Board of Commissioners has made a decision on an issue specifically interpreting and requiring that, it's not a requirement. And those aren't precedential cases.
Certainly not a legal requirement, but I've definitely seen noise impact analysis on many applications. And they can be very helpful. But we're not going to have one here, so we'll have to make our decision without one. But so now we saw the issue of had people want to leave the record open because they had heard new evidence, and so the staff is in favor of that.
I think staff is neutral.
Staff is neutral. Okay. Well, I'm going to close the record because this has been going on for quite some time, and we've had quite a bit of testimony. We've had a lot extended time, partially due to my error, that we had extra time for people to testify and get things in here. So I'm not going to keep the record open at this point. So I'm going to close the record and then we'll get a decision out on this. And any further final comments from the staff?
Just if you want to receive a copy of the decision or a notice, I should say, of the decision, make sure you give me your mailing address or have emailed me and you'll get a copy of that. So that's really the only thing to note. And generally the decision will be issued about 3 to 4 weeks from today.
Right. So, and I appreciate all your testimony. You're very courteous, very professional. It was, like I said, it was very good to see that people, respecting each other. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.